Hi, I'm Dave from Boinaband.com, and welcome to the final day of the Bassline 7-day song. Today, I'll be talking about mixing and mastering the song, with a little bit about mixing vocals, then show you the final finished song with the vocals on top. I have recruited the assistance of my close personal friend Rachie.
I'm your girlfriend!
Yeah, sure, whatever. To provide the cheesy female vocals required for an authentic Bassline song. Don't post your video responses to this video, post them to the next part where the final song is. Okay, let's start with the mixing. Make sure that you're mixing with the mastering suite bypassed, since it can vastly change the sound. If you make it sound good without mastering, then it will sound even better when you add it. You generally want to keep the beat and the bass the loudest, closely followed by the vocals. Then everything else is to your own taste. Remember, as I said in day one, the hi-hats in Bassline can afford to be a bit louder than you'd normally set them. Also, the break, with the piano and the pad, should be a little bit quieter than the drop if you want maximum punchiness when it all kicks in. I usually make the instrumentation sound well mixed first, then add the vocals. Start by muting all the channels, then unmute them one at a time. So we've got the drums, then bring in the bass. Make sure it's not overwhelming the drums, because the drums would be driving it. And bring in the sub and the strings. Then make each section an appropriate volume in relation to the rest of the track. Chances are that you'll have done a lot of this whilst making the sounds themselves, so you can get an idea of whether or not they fit into the mix. Another thing to do to make things mix well together is some more EQing. When it comes to adding vocals, sometimes they can get drowned out by the high end of a bass synth, ironic that. If you cut the frequencies where the most prominent high part of the voice is found, usually around 1 to 3 kHz depending on the vocalist, even by a small band this can make the vocal track a lot clearer. Another good technique is that when you finish mixing, leave it for a day and then come back and listen again. If you mix all in one go, chances are your ears will be tired from working on the project. Waiting that day gives your ears a chance to relax so you can listen objectively and with a fresh perspective. Plus, if you listen to the same Bassline song on repeat for too long, you'll probably end up killing the next person that talks to you. So it's probably a good idea for everyone in your immediate area that you give it that rest. Same goes for mastering too. So about that mastering, I'll start by setting this mastering suite to 8-band parallel compression. Notice that it's gone onto the on setting as well. You don't want it bypassed or it won't be doing anything. If we open it up, we can take a look at what it does. This uses a series of stereo images and compressors to make a multiband compressor, an awesome device which splits the signal into several frequency bands, as you can see here, and then compresses each one, then brings them back together. The advantage of this is, with a normal compressor, if your bass end had a really loud kick, for example, when you compress the whole track it would duck down whenever that kick drum came in, giving a sidechainy squashed effect. With multiband, when the kick comes in, only the low-end frequency band that it was affecting would duck down, leaving the other frequency bands sounding natural and retaining their volume. Also, if you find you haven't got enough high-end, you can just boost the higher bands and leave the bass. Okay, so I felt that the high end in this track was a bit lacking, so I'm just going to turn off all the other bands except for bands 5 and 6, since the lower high end is what I like. And if we take a listen to it without, and then with, that's definitely bringing it up a bit. Just going to unmute everything now. And I'm going to take the attack down a little bit, just to make it compress nice and fast. Maybe around 20, something like that. And if you feel the compression is a bit too strong, try easing up on the ratio a little bit. So let's take a listen without, and then with. You can definitely hear that high end is a bit more prominent now. And to smooth it all over, we're going to right click and create another M-Class Mastering Suite combi. If we press Tab to look at the back, we can see that the old mastering suite is going into the new one and then into the hardware device. So to reflect that, we're just going to move it above just so we can see the signal chain nice and clearly. And to smooth it all over, we're going to change it to the compact mastering setting as a kind of a default starting point, because this has some useful parameters to adjust. Let's take a look under the hood. Okay, first we've got the EQ, and this cuts the unnecessary extreme low end, then does some boosting of the low end in general. But the main thing is it gives you control over the bass and treble. If you can see here, it's changing the gain at this point and the treble on param 2. If you press Control click, it sets it back to the default values. The bass is defined as about 90 Hz and treble as 2.3 kHz respectively. This allows you to bring up the sub a little bit. with the bass there. And to compensate for any over-bassification you may have done while mixing, you can turn up the treble. And by the way, that is totally a word. Next is the compressor. This is going to make your track that bit punchier and in general make everything a bit louder. It's only a small compression ratio, but it'll help everything to fit in nicely. And the threshold control here will help you define how punchy you want the track, so take a listen. Much punchier when it's right down there, but when it's right up here, it's louder in general. So finding that balance is key. And lastly is the maximizer, which just brick wall limits everything and brings it all up to a nice level. The soft clip control here allows you to brick wall limit it in a slightly different way, supposedly by adding a nice warmth to the sound. But I can't really hear much of a difference. Maybe bassline isn't a genre suited for showing off subtle warmth. Before we finish up, I'll explain a bit about the vocals. I rewired Reason into Sonar 8.5, my audio sequencer of choice, and recorded the vocals into there with a Rode NT1 condenser mic. Condensers are great for vocals as a general rule, since they pick up more subtle changes in voice that a dynamic mic, for example, would not. They do require phantom power, so if your condenser mic isn't working, be sure to check that's on. One thing that can't be overstated if you're recording original vocals for bassline, when you have a woman in the studio, you have to be really careful what you say. Women get offended by things, especially when you treat them like crap for your own entertainment, so be sure you get the vocals recorded before you destroy their self-esteem. The plugins I generally use are a little bit of auto-tune to tidy things up. I stress a little bit, T-Pain is not welcome in dirty bassline. A compressor to bring up the volume, a little EQing to bring in the high end, around 2.5 kHz, and a delay plugin that is high-pass filtered so the delays don't interfere with the main vocal line, and so I can pretend I'm from the Backstreet Boys when I'm testing the mic out. For the obnoxious rap bit, what, you thought I wouldn't include one of those when I have a chance? I've EQ'd out a little bit of the bassier end of the vocals so it sounds less muffled as well. This can be useful if you want a bit more clarity to your raps. Alrighty, so that's the mixing and mastering done. Don't forget to like this video, and join me in part 2 where I'll be playing my full finished 7-day song.